You look beautiful every day. What's your secret?
How bad could things get at a Christmas party? You laugh, you celebrate, you exchange gifts, right? But some nights turn into nightmares in ways you never expect. Some people wear masks, and those masks only come off when alcohol removes them. The story I'm about to tell you happened on Christmas Eve, 2019, in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. A night that was supposed to be filled with joy and holiday spirit became something else entirely. Something darker. Something that would change lives forever. This is a true crime story. And it begins with a woman named Marcela. Marcela Reyes was 32 years old. She had moved to Portland from Guadalajara, Mexico, 7 years earlier with her husband, Daniel. They had built a good life together. Daniel worked as a construction supervisor. Marcela managed the front desk at a dental clinic. They lived in a modest 2-story house on Elm Street, a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other's names. Marcela was the kind of person who made friends easily. She had a warm smile and an even warmer heart. Her neighbors loved her. She always remembered birthdays, always brought homemade tamales to neighborhood gatherings, always asked about your day and actually listened to the answer. But there was one neighbor who paid a different kind of attention to Marcela. His name was Troy Beckham. 41 years old, divorced, living 3 houses down from Marcela and Daniel. Troy was originally from rural Tennessee, but had moved to Portland for work about 10 years back. He owned a small landscaping business. On the surface, he seemed like a regular guy. Friendly enough. Always said hello. Always offered to help with yard work. But there was something about the way Troy looked at Marcela. Something that made her uncomfortable, though she couldn't quite name it at first. It was in the way his eyes lingered just a second too long. The way he always seemed to be outside working in his yard whenever she came home from work. The way he found excuses to talk to her when Daniel wasn't around. Marcela had mentioned it to Daniel once or twice. Nothing too serious. Just a feeling. Daniel had laughed it off. Troy's harmless, he'd said. Just lonely after his divorce. Be nice to him. And Marcela was nice. Maybe too nice. Because she didn't want to make waves. She didn't want to be the woman who accused a neighbor of something when nothing had really happened. So she smiled. She made small talk. She kept her distance as much as she could without being rude. But Troy's attention never stopped. If anything, it grew. Now, let me tell you about their other neighbors. The ones who lived right next door to Marcela and Daniel. James and Patricia Morrison. James was 54, an accountant. Patricia was 51, a high school teacher. They were the kind of couple who had been married so long they finished each other's sentences. Good people. The kind of neighbors you actually want. Every year, the Morrisons threw a Christmas Eve party. Nothing fancy. Just neighbors, some co-workers, close friends. Hot cider, Christmas cookies, a fire in the fireplace. Patricia always decorated their house like something out of a magazine. Lights everywhere. A tree that touched the ceiling. Stockings with everyone's names on them, even the neighbors who dropped by. This year was no different. The invitation had gone out in early December. Handwritten cards in Patricia's careful script. You're invited to our annual Christmas Eve celebration. December 24th, 7 p.m. onward. Bring your appetite and your holiday spirit. Marcela and Daniel had RSVP'd, yes, immediately. They loved the Morrisons' parties. And this year, Marcela needed something to look forward to. Work had been stressful. The holidays always made her a little homesick for Mexico, for her family. A night of laughter and warmth with neighbors sounded perfect, but there was one invitation that made Marcela's stomach drop when she heard about it. Troy Beckham was invited too. Of course he was. He was a neighbor. The Morrisons invited all the neighbors. Daniel noticed the look on Marcela's face when she found out. What's wrong? he asked. Nothing, she'd said. It's nothing, but it wasn't nothing. And somewhere deep down, Marcella knew that December 24th arrived cold and clear. Snow had fallen the night before, just enough to make Portland look like a postcard. Marcella spent the afternoon baking her grandmother's recipe for polvorones, Mexican wedding cookies. She wanted to bring something special to the party. Daniel helped her arrange them on a platter, sneaking bites when he thought she wasn't looking. They'll love these, Daniel said, kissing her cheek. You're the best cook on this street. Marcella smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. She'd seen Troy's truck in his driveway earlier. She knew he'd be at the party. She told herself she was being ridiculous. It was a party. There would be lots of people. Daniel would be right there with her. Everything would be fine. At 6:45, they bundled up in coats and scarves. Daniel grabbed the platter of cookies. Marcella grabbed the bottle of wine. They walked next door, their breath making clouds in the cold air. Christmas lights twinkled on every house. Somewhere down the street, someone was playing carols. Patricia answered the door with a huge smile. You're here. Come in, come in. Merry Christmas. The Morrison house was already full of people. Warm air and laughter spilled out into the night. Marcella and Daniel stepped inside, stomping snow off their boots. The smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. A fire crackled in the living room. Frank Sinatra sang about a white Christmas from hidden speakers. Let me take your coats, James said, appearing with glasses of mulled wine. Marcella, those cookies look incredible. They settled in. Daniel started talking with James about the Trailblazers game from last night. Marcella found Patricia in the kitchen, helping to arrange cheese and crackers. They talked about the upcoming school semester, about Patricia's daughter who was coming home from college tomorrow, about everything and nothing. For about 20 minutes, it was perfect. Exactly what Marcella had hoped for, and then Troy arrived. Marcella heard his voice before she saw him. That loud, friendly boom that carried across a room. Hey everyone. Merry Christmas. He came into the kitchen, already holding a beer, already too loud. His face was flushed. Had he been drinking before he came? His eyes found Marcella immediately. There she is, he said, his smile widening. The prettiest woman in Portland. Marcella's stomach tightened. She forced a smile. Hi, Troy. Merry Christmas. Patricia, oblivious, laughed. Troy, you charmer. Can I get you some food? Troy waved her off. I'm good. Just wanted to say hello to my favorite neighbor. He moved closer to Marcella. Too close. She could smell the beer on his breath. Definitely not his first. Daniel was still in the living room, out of sight. Those cookies yours? Troy asked, pointing at the platter. But they're as sweet as you are. It was a nothing comment. Creepy, yes, but nothing she could call him out on without sounding paranoid. That was the problem with men like Troy. They always stayed just this side of deniability. Patricia was already moving to the next room, answering someone's question about the tree. Marcella was alone with Troy in the kitchen doorway. She took a step back. Thanks, I should go find Daniel, but Troy matched her step. Come on, don't run off. I barely get to talk to you anymore. You avoiding me? His tone was joking, but his eyes weren't. Marcella felt her pulse quicken. No, of course not. I've just been busy with work. You know how it is. Yeah, Troy said softly. I know how it is. Married life keeping you busy, huh? There was something in the way he said married that made Marcella's skin crawl. Before she could respond, Daniel appeared in the doorway. Hey babe, James is asking about that restaurant you wanted to try. Troy, how's it going, man? Troy's expression changed instantly. Smooth, easy, friendly. Hey Daniel. Good to see you, buddy. Just telling your beautiful wife here what a great cook she is. Daniel grinned, slipping an arm around Marcella's waist. Yeah, I'm a lucky guy. The luckiest, Troy agreed. His eyes stayed on Marcella just a beat too long before he clapped Daniel on the shoulder and moved past them into the living room. Marcella let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Daniel felt her tension. "You okay?" he whispered. "Yeah," she lied. "I'm fine," but she wasn't fine. And the night was just beginning. Over the next hour, the party filled up. More neighbors arrived. More co-workers. The noise level rose. Christmas music played louder. Someone started a game of charades in the living room. Laughter echoed through the house. Marcella tried to relax. She talked with other guests. She sipped her wine slowly. She stayed close to Daniel. But she could feel Troy's presence like a weight. Every time she looked up, he was watching her. Sometimes from across the room. Sometimes from just a few feet away. And he was drinking steadily. Beer after beer. She watched him go from flushed to glassy-eyed. His voice got louder. His laugh got more aggressive. His movements got less careful. Around 9:30, Daniel got pulled into a conversation about work with some of James's friends. They moved to the den, talking about permits and building codes. "Boring stuff," Daniel had said with an apologetic smile. "I'll be right back." Marcella nodded. She moved to the kitchen, thinking she'd help Patricia with cleanup. But Patricia was outside on the back deck, showing someone her new patio heater. Marcella was alone in the kitchen. She was rinsing wine glasses when she felt someone come up behind her. Too close. She knew who it was before she turned around. Troy. He was leaning against the counter, blocking her exit. His eyes were unfocused now. Definitely drunk. His smile was loose and wrong. "Hey Marcella," he said, his words slightly slurred. "Why you always hiding from me?" Her heart hammered. "I'm not hiding. Just helping clean up that, Troy continued, moving closer. "I see you every day. Coming home from work. In your yard. At the mailbox. You know what I think about when I see you?" Marcella's mouth went dry. "Troy, you've had a lot to drink. Maybe you should get some water." He laughed. A mean sound. "Don't change the subject. I'm talking to you. Really talking to you." For once, his hand reached out and touched her arm. Not aggressive. Not yet. But possessive, familiar, like he had the right. Marcella jerked away. "Don't touch me." Troy's expression darkened. "What? You too good for me? You smile at me every day. You talk to me. You're friendly. And now what? You're gonna act like I'm some kind of creep? You need to step back," Marcella said, her voice shaking but firm. Instead, Troy moved closer. His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "You know what your problem is? You lead guys on. You're nice to everyone. You think that doesn't mean anything? That smile? Those conversations? That tight little body in those jeans?" Marcella felt ice flood her veins. "Get away from me. Now or what?" Troy challenged. "You gonna tell Daniel?" "Tell him what? That I said you're pretty? That I complimented you? He'll think you're crazy." Before Marcella could respond, footsteps approached. Patricia came back inside, arms full of empty plates. "Oh, there you are." "Marcella, honey, you don't have to clean. You're a guest." Troy immediately stepped back, his expression morphing into a friendly smile. "Just keeping her company, Patricia. Best cook, best company." Patricia laughed oblivious. "Troy, you're too much. Come on, they're about to start Christmas karaoke in the living room." She ushered Troy out of the kitchen. He glanced back at Marcella once before he left. The look in his eyes was clear. This isn't over. Marcella stood there, trembling. Her hands gripped the edge of the sink. She wanted to leave. She wanted to grab Daniel and go home right now. But how could she explain it? What would she even say? A neighbor got drunk and said inappropriate things. It happened at every party. She'd sound paranoid, dramatic, oversensitive. So she took a deep breath. She smoothed her hair. She went back to the party. She found Daniel and stayed glued to his side for the next hour. But Troy was always there, watching, drinking, waiting. By 11 p.m., most of the guests had left. Just a few stragglers remained. Daniel was helping James carry leftover food to the kitchen. Patricia was upstairs getting blankets for the Johnsons, an elderly couple who'd had too much wine and needed to sober up before driving home. Marcella was in the living room, sitting on the couch when Troy sat down next to her. Not across from her. Next to her. Close enough that their legs touched. She immediately stood up. "I should help Daniel," she said. Troy grabbed her wrist. "Sit down." His grip wasn't painful, but it was firm, demanding. Marcella looked around. No one else was in the room. She could hear voices in the kitchen, but they were far away. "Let go of me," she said quietly. Troy let go. He didn't. Instead, he pulled her back down onto the couch. His face was inches from hers. "I've been patient," he said. "So patient with you. Watching you for months. Being nice. Being friendly. And you just ignore me. Like I'm nothing." "You're drunk," Marcella said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let me go, and I won't say anything to anyone." "Just let me go. Say anything?" Troy laughed bitterly. "Who's gonna believe you? Everyone here saw us talking. Saw us laughing. You think anyone's gonna believe I did something wrong? I'm just a friendly neighbor, right?" His other hand reached up and touched her face. Marcella flinched. "Get your hands off me," she hissed, but Troy didn't. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "So pretty," he murmured. "Do you know how many times I've thought about this? About touching you. About what I'd do if I ever got you alone." Marcella's mind raced. She could scream, but that seemed like an overreaction for a touch on the face. She could pull away, but he was holding her wrist. She could knee him, but there were people just in the next room. What if they thought she was crazy? What if Troy convinced everyone she'd let him on? The fear of not being believed kept her frozen for just a second too long. And in that second, Troy leaned in and pressed his lips against her neck. Marcella gasped and shoved him as hard as she could. Troy stumbled back, surprise on his face. Then anger. "You bitch," he started to say, but Marcella was already moving. She ran toward the kitchen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "Daniel," she called out. "Daniel." Daniel appeared in the doorway, concerned. "What's wrong? What happened?" Marcella looked back. Troy was standing now, but he'd composed himself. He looked confused, innocent even. She realized how this would look. She realized she had no marks on her. No proof, just her word against his. I don't feel well," she said instead. "Can we go home, please?" Daniel immediately came to her side. "Of course. Yeah, let's get you home." They said rushed goodbyes to the Morrisons. Patricia hugged Marcella, worried. "Too much wine?" she asked sympathetically. "Get some rest, honey." Troy watched them leave. He raised his beer bottle in a mock salute. "Feel better, Marcella. See you around the neighborhood." The walk home was silent, except for the crunch of snow under their boots. Daniel kept asking if she was okay. Marcella kept saying yes. But inside, she was screaming. They got home. They locked the door. They went upstairs. Daniel fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from the long day. But Marcella lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound, wondering if Troy was still awake 3 houses down, wondering what he was thinking, wondering what he might do next, because men like Troy don't just stop. They don't just give up. And Marcella knew, with absolute certainty, that this wasn't over. This was only the beginning. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling about someone? Have you ever convinced yourself you were overreacting? Drop a comment and tell me. Because sometimes our instincts know things our minds don't want to accept. The days after Christmas were strange. Marcella went through the motions. She went to work. She came home. She cooked dinner. She smiled when Daniel talked about his day. But inside, she felt like she was waiting for something terrible to happen. And she was right to feel that way. The first sign came on December 27th. Marcella was getting the mail when she noticed Troy's truck pulling into his driveway. Her stomach dropped. She considered going back inside without the mail. But that felt cowardly, paranoid, so she stayed. Sorted through the envelopes, bills, holiday cards. Junk mail. "Hey neighbor," Troy's voice made her jump. She hadn't heard him walk up. He was standing at the edge of her driveway, hands in his pockets, that same easy smile on his face. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't grabbed her. Like he hadn't put his mouth on her neck. "Hi," Marcella said shortly. She turned to go back inside. "Wait," Troy called out. "I wanted to apologize." Marcella stopped. Turned slowly. "What?" Troy walked closer. Not too close this time. Just close enough to talk without shouting. "About the party. I had too much to drink. I know I got a little friendly. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable. A little friendly." That's what he was calling it. Marcella's jaw tightened. "You did make me uncomfortable, Troy. Very uncomfortable." Troy held up his hands in surrender. "I know. I'm sorry. Really, it won't happen again. I promise. Can we just forget about it? Move on? We're neighbors. I don't want things to be weird." And there it was. The perfect trap. If she said no, if she stayed angry, she was the one making things weird. She was the one who couldn't let it go. She was the problem. "Fine," Marcella heard herself say, "just ... Keep your distance from now on." "Of course," Troy agreed quickly. "Absolutely. You got it," he smiled. That charming, harmless smile. Then he walked back to his house. Marcella went inside and locked the door. Her hands were shaking. That night, she told Daniel what had happened at the party. Not all of it. She downplayed it. She made it sound less scary than it was. She said Troy had been drunk and got a little too close. That he'd touched her arm. That he'd said some inappropriate things. She didn't mention the way he'd grabbed her wrist. The way his lips had touched her neck. The way his eyes had looked when he talked about thinking about her. Why? Because she knew how Daniel would react. He'd either dismiss it as drunken nonsense, which would make her feel crazy, or he'd march over to Troy's house and confront him, which would make everything worse. Daniel's reaction was somewhere in between. He frowned. "That's not cool. You want me to talk to him?" "No," Marcella said quickly. "He apologized today. Said it won't happen again. I just wanted you to know. In case. I don't know. In case he tries anything else." Daniel pulled her into a hug. "He won't. And if he does, you tell me immediately, okay?" "Okay," Marcella agreed, but she didn't feel reassured. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. The next incident happened on New Year's Eve. Marcella had taken the trash out. Around 9 p.m., it was dark, cold. She was only outside for a minute. But when she turned to go back inside, Troy was there, standing in his yard, watching her. "Happy New Year, Marcella," he called out. She didn't respond. Just hurried back inside. But through the window, she could see him. Still standing there. Still watching. For almost 10 minutes. It became a pattern. Every time Marcella left the house, Troy seemed to be there. Working in his yard. Getting his mail. Loading his truck. Always with a wave. Always with a smile. Always watching. Daniel didn't notice. Why would he? Troy waved to him too. Sighed hello. Made small talk about the weather and the trailblazers. To Daniel, Troy was just a lonely neighbor being friendly. But Marcella noticed everything. She noticed that Troy's landscaping truck was parked in his driveway more often now. Like he was arranging his schedule to be home when she came home from work. She noticed that he'd started jogging past her house every morning around 7:15. Right when she left for work. She noticed that when she and Daniel went out to dinner or to the movies, Troy's porch light would flip on as soon as they pulled back into the driveway. Like he was waiting up for them. It was surveillance disguised as neighborliness. And it was making Marcella feel trapped in her own home. By mid-January, she'd started changing her routine. She left for work at different times. She parked in the garage instead of the driveway. She stopped gardening in the front yard. She kept the curtains closed. Daniel noticed that. "Why are the curtains always closed now?" he asked one Saturday morning. "It's so dark in here. I like the privacy," Marcella said. Daniel laughed. "Privacy from who? The squirrels?" She didn't answer. How could she explain that she felt eyes on her constantly? That she couldn't relax in her own living room because she knew Troy could see in? That she'd caught him standing in his driveway one night, just staring at their house? Daniel would think she was paranoid. And maybe she was. Maybe Troy really was just being friendly. Maybe she was reading too much into waves and smiles and coincidental timing. But then came February 14th. Valentine's Day. And Marcella knew. She wasn't imagining anything. She came home from work to find a bouquet of roses on her front porch. Red roses. A dozen of them. No card, no name. Just roses in a cheap glass vase. Daniel hadn't gotten home yet. Marcella stared at the flowers. Her skin crawled. She knew who they were from. She knew. She picked up the vase with shaking hands and walked 3 houses down. Troy answered on the second knock. That smile again. "Marcella, what can I do for you?" She held out the flowers. "These are from you." It wasn't a question. Troy's smile didn't waver. "Maybe, maybe not. No name on them, right? Could be from anyone. They're from you," Marcella repeated. "Stop this. Stop leaving things at my house. Stop watching me. Stop all of it." Troy's expression changed. The smile disappeared. His voice went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. I sent flowers to a neighbor on Valentine's Day. Is that a crime? Am I not allowed to be nice?" "You're not being nice. You're harassing me." "Harassing?" Troy laughed. A bitter, angry sound. "That's a strong word, Marcella. You should be careful throwing words like that around. People might think you're unstable, paranoid, seeing things that aren't there. "I know what I'm seeing," Marcella said. Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I'm seeing a man who won't leave me alone. Who watches my house. Who shows up everywhere I go. Who touches me when I don't want to be touched." Troy stepped closer. His face was inches from hers now. Marcella could smell coffee on his breath. "Cigarettes, you know what I think?" he said quietly. "I think you liked the attention at first. I think you liked having someone notice you. Pay attention to you. Make you feel special. And now you're scared because you liked it too much. Because you know if you let yourself, you'd want more." Marcella felt sick. "That's not true, isn't it?" Troy's voice was almost gentle now, mocking. "Come on, Marcella. We both know there's something between us. This tension. You feel it too." "I know you do." "The only thing I feel is disgust," Marcella said. She shoved the vase into his chest. Water sloshed over the edge, soaking his shirt. "Stay away from me. Stay away from my house. If you don't, I'm calling the police." She turned and walked away, fast, her heart hammering. Behind her, she heard Troy's voice. "Call them, see what they say. See if they believe you." Marcella made it home. Locked the door. Sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Because she knew he was right. What would the police say? A neighbor sent flowers? A neighbor waves at you? A neighbor happens to be outside when you are. There was no law against any of that. No proof of anything criminal. Just a woman's word. Just a feeling. Just fear. When Daniel came home an hour later, he found her in the bedroom. She'd stopped crying by then. She told him about the flowers, about confronting Troy, about the things Troy had said. Daniel was furious. This time, his reaction was everything Marcella had feared it would be. He stormed out of the house. Marcella followed him, begging him to stop. But Daniel was already pounding on Troy's door. Troy answered. Still calm. Still smiling. Hey Daniel. What's up? What's up? Daniel's voice was loud, angry. You're harassing my wife. That's what's up. The flowers? The watching? It ends now. Troy held up his hands. Whoa, slow down. I sent flowers. That's it. I was being nice. If Marcella misunderstood my intentions, I apologize. But harassment? Come on, man. That's crazy. Don't call her crazy, Daniel snapped. I didn't call her crazy, Troy said smoothly. I said the accusation is crazy. There's a difference. Look, I'm sorry if I crossed a line. I didn't mean to upset anyone. I'll keep my distance. Okay, Daniel stared at him. Marcella could see the conflict on her husband's face. Troy sounded so reasonable, so apologetic. And Daniel wanted to believe him. Because believing him meant the problem was solved. Believing him meant Marcella was safe. Believing him meant everything could go back to normal. Okay, Daniel finally said. But I'm serious. Stay away from my wife. Understood, Troy agreed. You have my word. They walked back home. Daniel put his arm around Marcella. It's okay now. I handled it. He won't bother you anymore. Marcella wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe. But as they walked up their driveway, she glanced back. Troy was standing in his doorway, watching them. And when their eyes met, he smiled, not a friendly smile. Not an apologetic smile. A knowing smile. A promise. This isn't over. For the next few weeks, Troy kept his distance. He didn't wave. Didn't jog past the house. Didn't leave flowers. Marcella started to relax. Maybe Daniel's confrontation had worked. Maybe Troy had finally gotten the message, but in early March, things changed again. Marcella started noticing her trash cans being knocked over. Packages going missing from her porch. Her car getting scratched in the driveway. Small things. Things that could be coincidence, animals, porch pirates, accidents, but Marcella knew. And the knowing was worse than the actual acts. Because she couldn't prove anything. She couldn't point to Troy and say he did this. She had no evidence. No proof. Just a gut feeling that was eating her alive. She stopped sleeping well. She'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced she'd heard something outside. She'd look out the window and see nothing but darkness. But the feeling wouldn't go away. The feeling that someone was out there, watching, waiting. Daniel tried to help. He installed motion sensor lights, security cameras. He even talked about getting a dog. But none of it made Marcella feel safer. Because the danger wasn't outside. It was 3 houses away. And it had a name. By April, Marcella was a shadow of herself. She'd lost weight. Dark circles under her eyes. Jumpy at every sound. Her boss at the dental clinic pulled her aside one day. Are you okay? You seem stressed. I'm fine, Marcella lied. Just tired. But she wasn't fine. She was falling apart. And the worst part was that no one really understood. Not Daniel. Not her friends. Not even Patricia Morrison, who'd asked a few times if everything was all right between Marcella and Troy. I noticed things seemed tense. Patricia had said. Did something happen? No, Marcella had said. Everything's fine. Another lie. Everything was not fine. Everything was spiraling. And Marcella had no idea how to stop it. She felt like a prisoner in her own life, controlled by a man who had never technically broken any laws, never made any explicit threats, never done anything she could report. That was Troy's genius. He stayed just inside the boundaries, just legal enough, just deniable enough. And every time Marcella tried to explain what was happening, she sounded crazy, paranoid, oversensitive, making a big deal out of nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was psychological warfare. Death by 1,000 cuts. And Troy was winning. Have you ever felt trapped by someone who everyone else thinks is harmless? Have you ever tried to explain fear and had people tell you you're overreacting? Let me know in the comments. Because sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who know exactly how to hide in plain sight. It was a Tuesday in late April when everything exploded. Marcella had just gotten home from work. Daniel was at a job site across town and wouldn't be back until after 7. She pulled into the garage, closed the door behind her, and went inside. The house was quiet, safe, or so she thought. She made herself tea, changed into comfortable clothes, sat down at the kitchen table to pay some bills. Normal things, routine things, things that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, life was getting back to normal. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello, silence. Then breathing. Heavy breathing. Marcella's blood went cold. Who is this? More breathing. Then a voice, low, familiar. You look pretty today. That blue sweater really brings out your eyes. Marcella's heart stopped. She was wearing a blue sweater. She stood up so fast her chair tipped over. Where are you? How can you see me? Troy laughed. Soft and cruel. I can always see you, Marcella. Don't you know that by now? She ran to the windows, checked the locks, drew all the curtains. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, Troy said. Tell them your neighbor called to compliment your sweater. See what they do. See if they care. The line went dead. Marcella stood in her darkened living room, her entire body trembling. He could see her. Right now. From his house? From somewhere else? How long had he been watching? She felt violated in a way she'd never felt before. Like her skin had been peeled back and everything inside her was exposed. She called Daniel. It went to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She sent a text with shaking fingers. Troy called me. He's watching the house. Please come home. Then she did something she'd been avoiding for months. She called the police. The dispatcher was polite but distant. What's the nature of your emergency? My neighbor is harassing me. He just called and told me what I was wearing. He's been stalking me for months. Is he threatening you right now, ma'am? No, but he's watching me. He knows what I'm wearing. He must be watching my house. Okay. And has he made any direct threats to harm you? Marcella hesitated. Not in those words. But he grabbed me at a party. He sends flowers. He follows me. He calls me. This has been going on since Christmas. The dispatcher's voice remained calm and professional. Ma'am, I can send an officer to take a report. But without direct threats or evidence of a crime, there's limited action we can take. You might want to consider a restraining order. How do I get one? You'd need to go to the courthouse. File a petition. You'll need to document all incidents. Do you have any evidence? Text messages? Voicemails? Photos? No, Marcella admitted. He's careful. He never leaves evidence. The dispatcher sighed softly. An officer will come by within the next few hours to take your statement. In the meantime, make sure your doors and windows are locked. If your neighbor comes onto your property or makes any threats, call 911 immediately. The call ended. Marcella sat in the dark and waited. The officer arrived 2 hours later. A young woman, maybe 28, with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. Officer Sarah Chun. She sat at Marcella's kitchen table and took notes while Marcella poured out everything. The Christmas party. The flowers. The confrontation. The phone call today. Officer Chun listened carefully. When Marcella finished, the officer set down her pen. Mrs. Reyes, I believe you. I can see this is causing you significant distress. But from a legal standpoint, we have very little to work with here. What do you mean? He's stalking me. In Oregon, stalking requires a pattern of unwanted contact that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety. The flowers, the phone call, even being outside when you are, those things individually don't meet that threshold. The incident at the Christmas party is more serious, but it's your word against his. And it happened 4 months ago. Why didn't you report it then? Marcella felt her eyes burn with tears. I was scared. I didn't think anyone would believe me. Officer Chen's expression softened. I understand. But that makes it very difficult now. My recommendation is to document everything from this point forward. Keep a log. Dates, times, what happened. Save any messages. Record any phone calls if it's legal in your state. Build a case. Then file for a restraining order. That creates a legal barrier. If he violates it, we can arrest him, and until then, avoid him. Don't engage. Don't respond. And if he escalates, call us immediately. After Officer Chun left, Marcella felt more alone than ever. The police couldn't help her. Daniel was still at work. And Troy was 3 houses away, knowing exactly what she was wearing, knowing she was alone, knowing he'd gotten away with it again. Daniel came home around 8. Marcella told him about the phone call, about the police. Daniel's face went through a range of emotions. Anger, frustration, helplessness. I'm calling him right now, Daniel said, pulling out his phone. No. Marcella grabbed his arm. Don't. It'll just make it worse. How can it be worse? He's terrorizing you because he wants a reaction. That's what he wants. Attention. Control. If you call him, you give him that. Daniel looked at his wife. Really looked at her. She'd lost so much weight. Her face was gaunt. Her eyes haunted. She looked like someone who'd been at war. And in a way, she had been. So what do we do? He asked quietly. We document everything. We build a case. We get a restraining order. And then we hope it's enough to make him stop. But Marcella didn't believe her own words. And neither did Daniel. That night, Marcella couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound. At 2:14 a.m., she heard something outside. A thump. Like something hitting the side of the house. She got up. Looked out the bedroom window. Nothing. Just darkness and the glow of streetlights. But her car alarm went off. Loud and sudden in the quiet night. Daniel woke up. What's going on? The car alarm, Marcella whispered. Daniel went downstairs. Checked the security camera footage on his phone. The cameras showed nothing. No one had touched the car. The alarm had just gone off, probably a malfunction, Daniel said. I'll check it in the morning. But when morning came, they found something that made Marcella's blood run cold. Scratched into the driver's side door of her car, in jagged letters, was a single word. Mine. Daniel called the police immediately. Officer Chun came back. She photographed the vandalism. Took fingerprints. But they all knew what she'd find. Nothing. Troy was too careful. Too smart. This changes things, Officer Chun said. This is criminal mischief. Possibly stalking. We can question him. They did. Troy answered his door with that same innocent expression. Officer, what can I do for you? Mr. Beckham, someone vandalized Mrs. Reyes's car last night. Do you know anything about that? Troy frowned, concerned. That's terrible. No, I don't know anything. What happened? Someone scratched the word mine into her car. Troy shook his head. That's really disturbing. You know, I did hear a car alarm go off last night. Must have been around 2 a.m. But I didn't see anyone. I just figured it was a malfunction. Where were you between midnight and 3 a.m. last night? Home. Asleep. Alone. Is there anyone who can verify that? Troy spread his hands. I live alone, officer. So no, but I was here. And I didn't vandalize anyone's car. You're welcome to check my yard for paint or tools or whatever you need to check. They did check. They found nothing. Of course they found nothing. Troy had probably worn gloves. Had probably used something that couldn't be traced. Had probably disposed of any evidence hours ago. Officer Chun gave Marcella a sympathetic look. I'm sorry. Without evidence, we can't charge him. But this supports your stalking claim. File that restraining order today. Don't wait, Marcella did. She went to the courthouse. Filled out forms. Described months of harassment in clinical legal language. The judge reviewed her petition and granted a temporary restraining order. Troy was served papers that afternoon. He had to stay at least 150 feet away from Marcella at all times. No contact. No communication. No approaching her house. For 1 week, Marcella felt like she could breathe again. Troy's truck stayed in his driveway. His curtains stayed closed. He didn't wave. Didn't jog. Didn't watch. The restraining order was working, but on the 8th day, Marcella came home to find her front door open. Not broken. Not forced. Just unlocked and slightly open. Like someone had a key, she didn't go inside. She called the police from her car. Officer Chun arrived with backup. They cleared the house room by room. Nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. But someone had been inside. Marcella could feel it. The air felt different. Disturbed. And then they found it. On her bed. A single red rose. And a note written in careful block letters. Restraining orders are just paper. Daniel wanted to move. That night, he brought it up seriously. We can't live like this. Let's sell the house. Go somewhere else. Somewhere he can't find you, and let him win? Marcella asked. Let him drive us out of our home. He already won, Daniel said quietly. Look at us. Look at what this is doing to you. To us, this isn't living. This is surviving. Marcella knew he was right. But the thought of running, of letting Troy have that power, made her sick. This is our home, she said. We shouldn't have to leave. But maybe we do, Daniel replied. They fought about it for days. Daniel wanted to leave immediately. Marcella wanted to stay and fight. The stress put cracks in their marriage that had never been there before. They snapped at each other. Slept in separate rooms. Stopped talking except to argue. Troy was destroying them. Not with violence. Not with threats. But with psychological torture. With fear. With the constant weight of knowing he was there. Watching, waiting, planning his next move. And then came May 9th. The day everything reached its breaking point. The day Marcella finally understood just how dangerous Troy Beckham really was. The day she realized that some men don't stop until they're stopped. Daniel had gone to Seattle for a work conference. 3 days. Marcella had begged him not to go. But he had to. His job required it. So he went. And Marcella was alone. She took precautions. She had Officer Chun's direct number. She had pepper spray. She had the security system armed. She kept all the doors and windows locked. She parked in the garage. She didn't go outside after dark, but it wasn't enough. On the second night, at 11:47 p.m., Marcella's security system went off. Not the alarm. The cameras. Motion detected. Backyard. She pulled up the app on her phone with shaking hands. The camera showed her backyard. Dark except for the motion sensor lights that had just clicked on. And there, standing in the middle of her yard, looking directly at the camera, was Troy. He wasn't running. Wasn't hiding. He was just standing there, smiling. He raised one hand and waved, slowly. Then he blew a kiss at the camera. Marcella called 911. Her voice was shaking so badly the dispatcher had to ask her to repeat herself 3 times. He's in my backyard. Troy Beckham. He has a restraining order. He's in my yard right now. Officers were dispatched. Marcella stayed on the line. Stayed away from the windows. Watched the camera feed. Troy didn't move. He just stood there, waiting. When the police lights appeared in front of her house, Troy finally moved. He walked calmly to the back fence, climbed over it, and disappeared into the night. The officers searched. They found footprints. They found where he'd climbed the fence. But they didn't find Troy. He'd vanished. He's violated the restraining order, Officer Chun said. We have it on camera. We'll arrest him. I promise. But when they went to Troy's house, he wasn't there. His truck was gone. His house was dark. He'd run. For 3 days Troy was in the wind. Police had a warrant. His face was circulated to all officers. But Portland is a big city. And Troy knew how to hide. Marcella didn't sleep for those 3 days. She stayed at Patricia Morrison's house. Patricia had insisted. Daniel came home from Seattle immediately. They huddled together, waiting, wondering where Troy was, what he was planning, when he would strike next. And then on the 3rd day, they got a call from Officer Chun. We found him. Have you ever been afraid in your own home? Have you ever felt like the law couldn't protect you from someone who wanted to hurt you? Tell me in the comments. Because what happened next would change everything. We found him. Those 3 words should have brought relief. But when Officer Chun explained where they found Troy, Marcella felt her stomach drop. He was at a motel off Interstate 5. When officers knocked on his door, he let them in without resistance. And what they found in that room told a story that made everyone's blood run cold. The walls were covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. All of Marcella. Coming home from work. Getting the mail. Walking to her car. In her yard. Through her windows. Some were taken from across the street. Some from much closer. Some were so close that Troy must have been standing just feet away from her. There were notebooks filled with notes about her schedule. What time she left for work. What time she came home. What she wore. Where she went. Who she talked to. Months and months of detailed surveillance. And there was a plan. Handwritten pages describing what Troy called his endgame. How he would wait for the right moment. How he would get her alone. What he would do to her. What he would do to Daniel if he got in the way. Officer Chun showed Marcella some of the evidence, carefully selected to inform her without traumatizing her further. Marcella sat in the police station conference room and looked at photos of herself that she never knew existed. Her whole life, documented by a man she'd only tried to be polite to. Troy was charged with stalking, criminal trespass, violation of a restraining order, and harassment. The district attorney wanted more charges, but these were what they could prove. Troy's bail was set high. He couldn't make it. He sat in jail waiting for trial. The trial happened 6 months later. Marcella had to testify. Had to sit in a courtroom and describe every incident while Troy stared at her from the defense table. That same smile. That same look that said he wasn't sorry. That said even from jail, even facing prison, he'd still won something. He'd still gotten inside her head. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Troy to 4 years in prison. Not enough, Marcella thought. Not nearly enough for what he'd put her through. But it was something. It was safety. For a while at least, Marcella and Daniel did end up moving. Not because they had to. The threat was gone. But because the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. Every room held memories of fear. Every window reminded her of being watched. They sold it and moved to a different neighborhood. A fresh start. Therapy helped. Marcella saw a counselor who specialized in stalking victims. She learned that what happened wasn't her fault. That being polite wasn't leading someone on. That smiling at a neighbor didn't give them permission to obsess over her. She learned to sleep again. To go outside without looking over her shoulder. To trust that not every man who looked at her was a threat. Daniel and Marcella's marriage survived, but it changed. The experience had scarred both of them in different ways. They had to learn how to communicate again. How to trust again. How to be partners instead of just survivors. Patricia Morrison visited them in their new home. She brought cookies and apologies. "I should have seen it," she kept saying. "All those parties. All those times he was watching you. I should have noticed. You couldn't have known," Marcella told her. "He was too good at hiding it." But that was the thing about men like Troy. They were good at hiding. Good at seeming normal. Good at making their victims look crazy until it was almost too late. Troy served 3 years of his 4-year sentence. Got out early for good behavior. Marcella got a notification when he was released. The system allowed her to track him. Last she checked, he was living in Eugene, 2 hours south of Portland. Far enough. She hoped that she still checks sometimes. Still makes sure he's not moving closer. Still has Officer Chun's number saved in her phone. Still sleeps with pepper spray on her nightstand. Some fears don't completely go away. They just get quieter. But Marcella also learned to live again. She laughed again. She made friends again. She went to parties again, though she was more careful now about who she trusted. She and Daniel eventually had a daughter. Named her Sophia. And Marcella promised herself that she would teach Sophia to trust her instincts. To say no without apology. To understand that being kind didn't mean accepting behavior that made her uncomfortable. Because that's what this story is really about. It's about how we teach women to be polite at the expense of their safety. How we tell them not to make waves. Not to overreact. Not to be difficult. And how men like Troy exploit that training. Marcella's nightmare started with a Christmas party. With a drunk man who wouldn't take no for an answer. With small violations that grew into big ones. With a system that couldn't help until the danger was undeniable. She survived. But not everyone does. And that's what makes this story so important to tell. If you're experiencing harassment or stalking, document everything. Trust your instincts. Report it even if you think no one will believe you. Build your case. Get help. Don't wait until it escalates. And if someone tells you they're being harassed, believe them. Don't minimize it. Don't tell them they're overreacting. Don't ask what they did to encourage it. Just believe them and help them get safe. Because the truth is, it could happen to anyone. Your sister. Your friend. Your daughter. You. Have you or someone you know experienced something like this? What would you do in Marcella's situation? Let me know in the comments below. And please, share this story. Because awareness can save lives. Stay safe out there.